Oh God. Yeah. Well, we'll get there eventually. So
for sure.
Hi everybody, it's Kay Cook.
Hi, and I'm Juliana Valente. Kay, tell me what your week was like.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been an interesting week because as wacky weather is continuing, our neighborhood was beset by a very strong downdraft last night, and now there's currently a tree hanging on the power lines outside. Not my power lines directly. All of the misfortune landed on my neighbors next door. But, there's a tree on the roof, there's a tree dangling off of what appears to be maybe the generator, so it's been a day. Other than that, I mean, I've spent a lot of time working on editing. I closed that play I was doing in Radburn at Fair Lawn, New Jersey auditions this past Sunday. So
how'd it go? How was the run?
It went well. People seem to really enjoy this sort of immersive, odd theater experience. And I noticed it played way better when you had a lot of theater people in the room because they've all been to the auditions with these kind of people.
It's an inside joke.
The guy who, is really helpful at set construction but really can't sing, who really wants to be in the chorus. You had a pair of warring divas. You had the kid who we called the Dit.
Which is you were one of the warring divas, right?
Indeed. And then you had the child who was the Dit or the diva in training. God, what else? What other things were in there? Mr. Unexpected was the guy who just showed up to audition with this amazing, dramatic, baritone voice. Personally, to me, that moment of the show was always, that's the guy you hope auditions, but doesn't necessarily come out.
Yeah.
Hey, this is our fantasy theater troupe. We can be what we want to be. So, auditions went well, and now I'm editing that because, like I did for a certain other show that we've worked on together and will soon be working on together again, I'm kind of the recording team, so we've got it memorialized. We actually have 3 cameras on this, so I'm having it's a whole new world. Our director, Amy Sellers, let me borrow her spare camera kind of to cover the director's table, because the other thing was our director was staged in the audience. So to get coverage on the director who's facing the auditionees, I needed a third angle. So learning more all the time in the editing world while acting. Learning and working the craft.
That's cool.
And with trees falling down. That was my week.
Right. Because you need a little bit more drama in your life right
now. Nature was like, wait a minute, I don't think... Nature / God was, how God never gives you more than you can handle. God was like, wait a minute, I don't think she's quite there yet. Let's try this. I can steal a bit from Tig Notaro now, but I won't. The angels are standing. The angels are standing by going, God, what are you doing? And God's like, no, she got this. Okay. So how was your week, Juliana?
I've had a fun and funny week. So as you know, I've been doing this Hamiltunes, which is, I can't describe it anything other than karaoke for professional actors and singers. So they're actual performances. We have an audience. And we do the entire show. I sent you a picture of the set. Maybe I'll post that on our Stranger page. The set is pretty awesome for karaoke. Mm-hmm. And it's like partially costumed, like whatever you have in your closet, which for most of us actors, we've got something.
Yeah.
As you can see, those of you who are joining us in podcast only, audio only, I'm a bit in costume tonight. And so I did the roles of Peggy and Mariah. It's so much fun. And I thought of you because we talked not jokingly about how we wish you could come down. Last Saturday night, it was all female except for Alexander Hamilton. It was pretty cool.
You needed a female Lafayette and Jefferson? Pick me.
It's boys are scheduled now because they had conflicts. But I thought of you, and I was like, it would be cruel for me just to text her and tell her this right now as she's in another show right now. And then I did some voiceover things. I do voiceover work, and one of my favorite things to do in voiceover world is phone prompts.
Oh boy.
So I did a phone prompt for a regional theater, and I had done their phone prompts about 1 or 2 years ago, so we were just refreshing those. So that was a fun thing. I'm the kind of person that when people call, they think they're speaking to an answering machine already.
Oh God.
This happens to me all the time. And I think it's because I put on my performer voice. You never know when it's going to be like a casting agent, fingers crossed, or a teacher, or I teach and coach. It could be a new student. So I tend to put on a professional voice when I answer the phone.
Whereas I get sirred on the phone. It's fine.
You get what?
Sirred. Yes, sir?
What?
I get sirred.
Oh, sir?
I get spammed. I get sirred. It's fine. We're cool with this. It's not weird at all. No, totally weird.
I don't hear your voice is setting that low. But maybe I'm just used to it.
Well, apparently. I mean, I've always been told I have a lower voice / previous podcast that I worked on a few years ago. There were people who were like, I'm jealous you have such a low resonant voice. And so that's the first time that was like a positive thing for me, because typically I'd want to like bring it up and try to be lighter.
Have a little bit of a NPR moment with your voice.
Probably.
You're inhabiting your voice.
Yes. I'm
well, I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago I sent you a text that said, a very excited text, as they usually are, saying, hey, I have an idea for a podcast episode. You're never going to guess what happened when I Googled Gothic Feminism.
For break number one, because we're working actors and we have projects that work on, and there might be people wanting to come see us in aforementioned projects, so we realized we should probably give you concrete information on these things in their own segments. As I said in the first segment, I actually just closed auditions at Radburn Players in Fairlawn. Had a fantastic experience with it. And since I can't give you dates and stuff, I will just say one little insider thing that I did base my character on my theater mentor, Debbie May, who we're coming up on, sadly, the 1-year anniversary of her death. But I know she would have been super proud / a little, maybe wanting to wring my neck slightly, because I did totally co-opt some of her things that we teased her about all the time. Like her tendency to darling everybody, and to, the only thing I didn't do that was a Debism was shouting from the back of house, all right, people! And that was my weak version of it, because my voice is tired from doing all of these shows in a row.
You sound like Liza Minnelli.
A little bit. So that was an incredible amount of fun. And now, actually, for the first time in 2018, I'm on a little bit of a break until 1776 performs anyway. August, and we're going to put these dates out. Actually, this is kind of an exclusive for Strange Deer, because it hasn't quite even shown up yet. But for those who listen to us, now you're getting the inside scoop. It's going to be August 23rd.
You heard it here first.
Here first. August 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th. So unlike the past where we've done only 2-night runs with a Friday and a Saturday, we're kicking out the wall here. I believe actually, okay, this is me maybe telling tales out of school, but I believe we're doing a 2-show day on Saturday. So the 25th would be two opportunities to see an all-female 1776, which is something I would love to just do forever. I was actually working with the director this week to kind of nail down the last bits of the script so we can start rehearsing in like 10 days, not even. So that's exciting.
Right. I forgot about that.
Very soon. Because we're actually having our set. Did you just sweat a little? Because that's funny, you made a face.
Because I have not looked at that new script yet.
Because you're John Adams. And
Kay and I are both in this show.
Yeah.
We actually play rivals.
A little
Thomas
bit.
Jefferson and John Adams.
But we're not quite rivals at this stage of our lives yet. Get there. We absolutely get there. You know, party politics, you're looking at the beginning of it between Adams over here and Jefferson here. But, no, it's 1776, so Mr. Adams, you're carrying the show. And it's still largely concert staging, but we're working more of the book into it, and we're going to be doing a whole special night on it. So I'm not going to keep talking too much more on this because I want to save something for, I don't know, our episode that actually we are going to be recording with our cast on Memorial Day weekend. I would plug who we've got, but I'm still not quite sure. So I know our director is joining us. I posted a thing in our little exclusive Facebook group today to be like, hey, who's going to be here? And nobody's responded yet. So I was hoping for some bites.
I didn't even see it. It did not come up for me.
Okay, it's there. It's there. But anyway, it's a fun little, Kate did some green screens, so enjoy looking for that later. Maybe we'll even share that.
Oh, yay.
Because Kate was definitely leaning on the strange part of Strange Deer for that. But yeah, I don't have any other projects to plug besides 1776. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's just like, look, we're actually we're in what I call multiple Monticello, which is funny if you know Italian. But or you're a nerd like I. But I don't mind only having to work on 1776 right now. I've been doing 2 shows on top of each other since January. So having just one to focus on is a nice break. Whereas now you're about to start having my life, Juliana, with your projects, I believe, a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Hamilton's is getting me in the mood. I'm really living in this revolutionary era, because when I get back, coming up May 26th, I'm teaching an all-day Hamilton workshop. This is for youth and teens at Rhino Theater. It is from 11 to 5. And then there's like a showcase concert, so like a mini Hamilton's at the end. So if you are or you have older kids or teens who like Hamilton at all, they're going to absolutely love this. Okay, this is the 3rd time I've taught this workshop. I am stunned with how these kids know the lyrics verbatim and can like just spit it out.
Man, that's a great thing though. Like when we about Revolutionary War musicals at our very first episode, I said, anything that gets the history out of the textbook and back, in present pop culture again is A-okay by me.
Yeah. And then in August, I'm coming back. I'm coming back down after we do our live show.
At
Nutley Little Theater on June 1st.
Yep.
That is a free show. So if you are in Northern Jersey and you want to come see our podcast live, it's going to be so much fun. So that's June 1st, the evening of June 1st, around 8:45 at Nutley Little Theater in Erie Place in Nutley, New Jersey. Then after that, I'm coming back down south to do some regional theater with Theater Raleigh. I will be playing the role of Sharon in Masterclass, and that is August 8th through 19th. Then, of course, going right back up to do 1776 with Kay et al. And that's what we've got going on.
And now to make good on that tease that we gave you from the first segment, we're going into the meat of what Juliana found when she Googled
Gothic Feminism. Mm-hmm. So I was doing research, if you remember back in episode 10, was it 10 when we talked about crime fiction?
Yes.
Or not, 10. And I did a whole segment on Edgar Allan Poe. And when I was doing the research or refreshing research for Edgar Allan Poe, I came across the term Gothic Feminism. And I had never either come across that term or never really thought about it in the context of some of the conversations that we've had around feminism and the theater and feminism in literature. Mm-hmm. But I came across this book by Diane Long Hoveler. I think I'm saying her name right. I might be saying it wrong. I apologize, Diane, if I'm mispronouncing your name. She's a big listener of our podcast. But she writes this book called, this is the full title, Gothic Feminism, The Professionalization of Gender from Charlotte Smith to the Brontes. So I'm in.
Yeah, I know. That's
already.
Right up your alley.
Yeah, so she's covering British women writers in the late 18th and 19th centuries and how they sought, this is a quote from the jacket cover, they sought to define how they experienced their era's social and economic upheaval. They helped popularize a new style of bourgeois female sensibility. So Hoveler is a literary critic, and she's making the argument that this female-created ideology that's now known as victim feminism is getting its root and momentum in this era of writing, and specifically in this genre of the Gothic novel. So in the Gothic novel and late and early Romantic literature, we have a heroine, but she's being portrayed as a victim. So you can boil down the definition of what are we talking about when we say Gothic feminism. That's what we're talking about. We have a heroine who she's female, but she's a victim. It's reinforcing this idea that women are there to be protected, that they are fragile, intuitive angels. And it also creates this new, so this is we're finally getting a middle class. So women are finding a new place in this bourgeois class, and some of those places, some of the duties of women at the time are really to provide emotional labor, which you're probably going to talk about when you talk about modern day feminism.
Yeah. Oh, I have a lot of fun notes coming. No worries. I've also sort of lived this with my whole women's college experience. #women's
Yeah,
college.
I'm sure. And then specifically in this Gothic era, there is some of the novels were written, at least this is what Hoveler's proposing, to give this almost catechism for female behavior, teaching professional femininity, cultivating this wise passiveness, the controlled emotions that's going to prepare them for social survival. Though it is a fact, it is social survival, and there are these gender norms that are there on a survival level. Okay, where have you heard the term Gothic feminism before? Are you new to this as well?
Fairly new. I mean, I'm not new to feminism by any stretch, which I'll be getting into again later on. I think I sort of encountered it from the standpoint of, while I wasn't an English major, I was majoring in theater. You do any kind of reading whatsoever representing female characters going back, even, to be honest, less than 100 years. And you find yourself abutting very quickly to just the wild changes that we've made in portrayals. And I mean, my bent was much more towards how they're portrayed on stage versus literature, like I said, theater major.
Yeah.
But they're very similar in the same regard, because you're talking about fictional female portrayals, and in a lot of cases, kind of being used like a secondary to prop up the male character a little bit, or when you had a female, like, I remember the first time I ever read, for instance, The Doll's House, and completely blowing my mind. And we did, sections of it. But again, I don't want to pull us too far away from what you're talking about right now. I will hold my presence.
Oh, I would definitely. No. It's definitely speaking to the same era.
Yeah.
And the same idea of gender norms and roles. Okay, so coming to this idea of Gothic feminism, I want to start with a sidebar.
Okay.
I want to start with the idea of Gothic feminism as being a context for our acting. I work with lots of young women who want to know, what do I do with my hands? Not mine, theirs. What do they do with their hands? And it's not just women that say this.
Oh, no.
Go through this. But do you know what I'm talking about?
That is the classic actor thing. To my memory, one of my first acting 101 lectures was like, it's interesting how you don't realize you have these two appendages on your body that kind of have a mind of their own sometimes until you're standing on stage and everyone's looking at you.
Yeah. And this is where I get on a little bit of a soapbox in saying, if you're going to do a period piece, a not contemporary piece, and by not contemporary piece, I really mean something that's pre-1980. I'm not talking about 1880s. And you are a woman in particular, if you just do the smallest bit of research and understanding of the era that your character is in, you are going to know exactly what to do with your hands.
Correct.
You're going to know exactly what to not do with your hands. You're going to know exactly what you want to do with your hands, but you can't do with your hands. So when I get the question, what do I do with my hands? I'm doing, in my head, I'm doing kind of like a, face palm, because I almost always go to, well, what are you wearing? Do you know what it's like to wear a corset?
Right.
And this is for even girls who are playing mid-century women. It was quite standard to be to have your, I don't know, what do they call them? Not Spanx, but your your foundation garments. That's the word my mother used.
Yeah, foundation garments.
Your foundation garments.
Yes. That's
right.
Mm.
As part of your, outside clothing, right? If you're going to the bank or going to the supermarket, a la Stepford Wives, you're going to have your foundation garments on even.
I did a production of The Secret Garden my second year in college, and I was one of the dreamers, which is to say the dead ghosts in the background. And I had a full faux whale. We didn't actually go, a whaling, but a faux whalebone corset. And good Lord. Well, first of all, I have many stories I could tell about having to faint die on stage and then have because since I couldn't bend at the waist, have my dance partner basically leverage me back up because we're on a rake. So there's me, head facing down stage, and I'm like, help. Can't sit up.
But you know what I mean? Like,
totally,
you have been in period dress before, but for people who are not used to period dress, or who aren't thinking about, like, even the 1970s as being, like, a period where there's a prescribed way for a woman to behave and to dress, many of those just become part of your given circumstances that for some people, like, to get to their character, you can start with your costuming. You can start and not just like get in the mood, but to understand what it's like to move or to want to move and not be able to move, right?
It gets a bit of a dirty thing to it because people are like, oh, well, that's so method, and why do you need that to get into character? But you know what? Whatever works for you. To be honest, I mean, one of the
you
notes,
don't, right.
One of the notes I remember getting,
and you don't even have to put on the garments. I mean, it's very helpful to know what it's like, but you don't need to be wearing, a corset to an audition, certainly. But to be able to know what that feels like and to be able to assume that posture. And this is for men too, obviously, but it's much more dramatic for women to understand what's happening in women's history.
As my husband has put it when he's speaking of formal wear, for whatever reason, at least modern, to dress up, a woman nowadays is wearing less and a man is wearing more. But really, there was a whole lot more that went into dressing up the female for, this is so funny, this is going to dovetail with something. Sorry, I know I keep bringing Jefferson into the room, but I'm going to do it again one more time, because there's a letter he wrote to his daughter talking about how a woman should present herself, and how from like first thing in the morning, not a hair out of place, and she should never appear slovenly. And, you know, just, I'm like, it's such a different time, man. I'm thinking about...
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Okay, so again, going back to this idea of what do I do with my hands? Think about your costuming, but also think about your social expectations.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to have those expectations, that you're not fighting against, you know, well, in acting, we're also going for the conflict, you know, where's the drama, where's the, you know, more than likely you're going to want to move around more than you can, right? Sure. So just that's just something to keep in mind, that some of these things and when you're building a character, and it happens to be a character that is, you know, a time and place that is not our own, consider for a moment that you cannot move the way you want to move. You cannot speak your mind without there being consequences.
Which does things to your mindset as a result.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. So, what do you do with your hands? It depends on your time and place. When we think of Gothic literature, we're thinking of a Gothic novel, we're thinking of a subgenre of romantic literature, we're thinking sometimes of Gothic horror. What the things that come under the umbrella of Gothic fiction is usually horror, death, sometimes romance, a lot of times romance, ghosts. So we have supernatural things. That's a trademark. The term Gothic, it was referring to medieval or pseudo-medieval buildings, castles, that emulate Gothic architecture. The first time I actually really studied the history of where we got the term Gothic and like the history of Gothic novels was, do you know Bill Bryson? Yes. Not personally, but the author. Do you know of him? He wrote the short. What was that?
He's a close personal friend. He comes over to dinner. Keep going.
Close personal friend. Yes, that's what I thought. He was over for tea. He wrote A Walk in the Woods, The Short History of the World. He also wrote one of my favorite nerdy books. I have it on audiobook. I listen to it on road trips. It's very long, but very interesting to me. It's called At Home, A Short History of Private Life. He wrote it in 2011. He sets it in, he's living in an old home in England, and he goes through like each room of the house and gives a history basically of human dwellings, human culture through the rooms in our house. And he talks about Gothic architecture in the Gothic novel. In 1764, author Horace Walpole wrote The Castle of Otranto, and in its second edition, the original title was The Castle of Otranto, a Story. In the second edition, the title is The Castle of Otranto, a Gothic Story. It takes place in a Gothic castle, so that Gothic becomes the name, Gothic story becomes part of the title and kind of sets off this new genre. In it, again, we like to talk about what establishes the genre. So we've got supernatural, fantastical. Plot devices and characters are like secret passages, clanging trapdoors, pictures moving on their own, walls moving on their own, doors closing by themselves. This whole genre is developed further by Clara Reeve, Anne Radcliffe, William Thomas Beckford, Matthew Lewis. And in the Victorian era, it's taken to a whole other level, still very much in the vein of Gothic literature, but now with the romantic, more fully developed romantic twist to it. So, again, why do I talk about eras so much? Because I'm an actor and a director, and your era is so effing important to understanding your character development. So, the huge thing for romantic era is that it's all about the exploration of the individual imagination as it's motivated by an ideal. The Gothic response to Romanticism is, yes, we are also very curious and intrigued by the individual imagination, but we believe that there is darkness in human hearts and minds that's to be contended with. So it takes on the darkness. And so the horror element of the Gothic novel is really much more in the Romantic era is a psychological drama, psychological thriller, whereas the monster is not necessarily a physical one, but a theoretical one, your own subconscious. Okay, so when we think of like the trademark Gothic novel, we're thinking of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That's 1818. That's so early, not in the Victorian era.
Kind of the prototype, I would say.
Yes, for sure, in many ways, and we're actually going to get to that when we talk about other things. Edgar Allan Poe, obviously, even Charles Dickens with his Christmas Carol, obviously Bram Stoker's Dracula. So the history now of feminism is caught up with the Victorian Gothic era. Both of these movements and points of view, worldviews are being developed at the same time. Now, I mentioned Mary Shelley. Shelley's her married name. Mm-hmm. She's Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. And she... Yeah. She is known just as important as Frankenstein. She writes in 1792, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which is a critique of the social norms that were holding back women from their potential in the 1790s. She discusses education, physical exercise, political rights, employment, property ownership, things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
200-300 years later.
Yeah, totally. And it's a bit sobering when you go, hey, 1790 to 2018, how are we doing? How are we doing? This is going to get into me later.
Seriously. Yeah, so many of the same writers who are... All right. Romanticism is exploring the human imagination, right? Kind of in its ideal sense. But when you start doing that, you're a writer or a reader or a literary critic, you're going to start noticing that not every human perspective is being given enough attention. So it's no surprise that this inequality is part of the female experience. There is a backlash. And at the same time, a huge encouragement to think about women as individuals versus incarnated ideals. This is the Madonna whore syndrome. This is real clear when you look at Victorian sexual identity and sex lives and women, how they, are as sexual beings. Can we talk about hysteria for a second?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Here we go. It's categorized as a medical disease. Hysteria is taken from the Greek word for womb. Yep. So this is a woman's disease. Its symptoms, though, that we know today are consistent with What was that?
I'm pretty sure you didn't go to a women's college after all. Because I'm like sitting in my 101 classes, but no, please go.
Okay, so symptoms of hysteria are consistent with what we know as very normal functioning human female sexuality.
For instance.
The symptoms of hysteria, for example, faintness. Have you seen what you have to wear in these days if you're a woman? Okay, faintness, duh. Nervousness. Sexual desire is a symptom. Insomnia. Fluid retention. Heaviness in the abdomen. Shortness of breath. Again, do you know the costuming? Irritability. Loss of appetite for food or sex, and a tendency to cause trouble.
Well, you know.
Now, I'm being silly and laughing about this right now because it is silly and laughable, but the truth is that if you were a woman diagnosed with hysteria in these days, you could be sent to an asylum.
Mm-hmm.
You could undergo a hysterectomy. This was a horrible mistake on the part of the medical community. They simply didn't have, when we talk about the patriarchy, we're not being militant feminists out to kill all men. When we talk about the patriarchy, we're simply talking about the idea that for so many years, so much a part of our culture is defined from a male-only perspective. That's what Time's Up is about, right? So if your culture is defined, if your culture is defined only from the male perspective, that's the patriarchy, and that's where the very unfortunate situation for women was in the 19th century.
Yeah.
We're so much better now.
We like to think we are. We like to think we are.
I know. Again, the whole, what do I do with my hands thing. A girl was doing a piece from the early 1960s, and I said, she's like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do with my body. I was like, can you just let me give you a thought. You're a 30-year-old woman. You are not allowed to own a checking account. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We have. But in these days,
where your hands go.
Can you imagine being? I am positive I would have been diagnosed with hysteria.
Yep.
Positive. Mm-hmm. And it would have been up to the men in my life to decide what would happen to me, as I am a victim of my own femininity. Right? Yep. So it's common when we talk about feminist movements and modern feminism, sometimes our modern brains go immediately to the civil rights era of the early 1960s. But the first wave of feminism is the late 19th century. We have Mary Wollstonecraft coming in at the very beginning of the 19th century. Jane Austen, we talk about her in the Regency era. She passed away in 1817. But we think of them as foremothers of the modern women's movement because they advocated for the dignity, intelligence, basic human potential of the female sex. Though women were still thought of as victims.
Right.
And weaker vessels. And it's not until the very end of the 19th century that the fight for equal rights for women is emerging out of this environment of urban industrialization. We have liberal socialist politics. Again, this Romantic era. Can we thank the art of the Romantic era maybe for opening us up, opening our minds to imagination, and if we can imagine what it might be like for other people? I would like to think the romantic part of my brain, the ideal part of my brain, wants to credit and thank the art, the theater, the music, and the writers of the Romantic era for helping open our minds just a little bit.
There is a reason that
the focus
and music, etc., would be censored, and women were told not to go to the theaters at times because it would put thoughts in your head. They knew from whence these thoughts was coming, or at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so many thoughts. Keep going.
Yeah. So feminism in this first wave is really focused on suffrage, which means the right to vote.
Because we didn't. Because we did not.
Because we did not. But the thing is, obviously that's a package deal, right? If someone is not given, and obviously minorities and specifically African Americans had a much more difficult, longer journey in America for this. But if you think about the package that comes along with the right to vote, the right to hold property, that agency is a pretty big thing. If you're a hardcore patriarch, that's a hard thing to let go. So that's where the first wave feminism is focused. There's 1848 is the very famous Seneca Falls Convention up in your neck of the woods. 300 men and women are rallying for equality of women there. And then we have the African American Sojourner Truth. This is just after the Civil War and the Reconstructionist era. She demands famously, "Ain't I a woman?" Victorian American women are seen acting in very, quote, unladylike ways. They're speaking in public, they're demonstrating, they're participating in these political movements, and they're challenging what was called the cult of domesticity. That when we do no thank you to the Romantic writers, have encouraged this idea that women are there to be to really provide an emotional support and to be angels and to provide this almost supernatural quality to your life if they are a good moral woman. So all of this kind of lays as quiet, and we don't hear a lot about the feminist movement in the early 20th century. I was thinking about this today. Why not? Well, we had 2 world wars, for one, and women are kind of naturally taking on these roles on the home front that obviously maybe equal rights didn't seem like as big an issue.
Yeah,
on the world stage.
World War II. When we had women who were,
sure.
I mean, literally taking on men's positions because they were being sent over to Europe. But then, of course, I think what kind of starts to turn us around the corner a little bit is what's expected once the boys come home, that the women will happily hand the rivet guns back over to the men so they can take their jobs and we'll go back into the kitchen. And
that's right, yes.
That I feel like is sort of where the threads of where we start to evolve, spill out from.
Second wave feminism, I'm going to hand over to you. We think of it starting around 1968 for one of the first big feminist protests. That's one of my favorite moments. Yeah. The radical New York group called the Red Stockings stage a counter pageant. This is with the Miss America pageant. These revolutionaries start this counter pageant where they crown a sheep as Miss America, and they throw oppressive feminine artifacts such as bras, girdles, high heels, makeup, and false eyelashes into the trash can.
Yeah.
And I think I'm wearing all of those items today.
Yeah, well, hold on, because you know where I'm going with the next couple waves. So I've got things to say. I've got thoughts. Hey, Juliana, where can I out with other strange dears, send a correction, put in an episode suggestion, or find out where I could see a live show coming up, or maybe just kind of creepily lurk in the corner watching things and stalking you on social media?
I'm glad you asked. You can follow us on Instagram. That's probably the best way, @StrangeDear. Follow our hashtag #StrangeDear. And on Facebook, we are @StrangeDear. You can also feel free to email us at strangebutTrueDear@gmail.com.
I love how our things sync up. This is why we work together. But within the past year or two, I have read a thick tome on Gloria Steinem. This wasn't just a college thing. This was like in my spare time. I, am fascinated by really pioneers. We talked about how we were coming out of World War II.
You're such a strange dear.
I am, dear. And you know what? I'm going to lean into it now and talk more about specifically the strangeness of me that is, and I've said this in the past. I said this on the episode where I was talking about one of my favorite feminists / gay LGBT icons, B. Arthur, who I gravitate towards ballsy broads. But I talked about the fact
I think my favorite feminist should be a spin-off podcast.
Totally.
For us.
if it doesn't already exist out there, my favorite feminist. We could have a recurring segment. Who are we who's our favorite feminist this week? But anyway,
exactly.
So just to march our timeline forward a little bit here, we've talked about the 60s, and we've talked about we talked about the second wave a little bit. Talking third and fourth wave feminism is a little weird for me, and I think it may be a little bit strange for you too, Juliana. From one standpoint, it's just the fact. And I'm going to put some specific dates on these, but we were about 5 years old by academic definitions when the third wave, quote unquote, began. So that means we grew up with women in some powerful positions already. So much had been accomplished by then. From a certain perspective, that might actually beget, and I know some contemporaries of mine, this feeling that, the fight's over, that things are better now. And actually there are people, though, let's talk about other things here, who actually object to the idea of even calling these waves of feminism, because in a way it seems to kind of say that it puts in start and stop points, and there's really more just like of a continuing movement. And I like that you've kind of been emphasizing what this led to this, because you don't want to negate in between accomplishments. That said, I think there is an important demarcation, and this is where third and fourth wave comes in here, kind of the advent of the internet and of social media, which is so funny and so meta for us to be talking about right here and right now. But let me put some dates.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah, let me put some dates on this. Third wave feminism, academically anyway, is defined as approximately 1990, to, believe it or not, 2012, which I found to be a very late date to be putting in there. I know. There are those who, and I actually tend to believe a little bit more. Third wave is like, let's roll it back to about 2005. But third wave, really, the third wave feminists were born in the 60s and 70s. So they were the kids during that time. They were watching this happen. And I've heard it kind of referred to as the Anita Hill generation. I'm going to be bringing one of the biggest things, and this was the thing that you'd see on TV. Now, this is pre-social media, so let's be clear. Clarence Thomas, if you're unfamiliar with the outrage that surrounded that, his being confirmed despite being... God, this is going to be hard to do without bringing in words that I want to use. A woman abuser. Anita Hill testified that this man abused her, and yet he was still confirmed to this. It's like there was literally people going, but wait, what? Does it not matter what he does in his personal life? Oh, well, that shouldn't affect his decision making. No, well, he's supposed to be making decisions for both genders, so this is a concern for me. I have questions.
I studied this case a bit when I was doing Oleana, and it's just so depressing that we don't seem to be learning anything from these situations. Yeah. As it's not in our zeitgeist.
Or even more,
for everybody in America.
But we still make the same mistakes. For whatever reason, there still seems to be this blind spot. Now, other aspects of third wave feminism, this is kind of where you start to hear the term intersectionality as well for the first time. You're talking about layers of oppression. You're talking about not just gender, but the additional layers. You got into this a little bit, how much further black women have had to come. How strange it is for white women to be able to say, well, we had this much of a step up. There was gender, race, class differential. It's Also, I think I would be remiss if I'm not mentioning Riot Girl, GRRL, which was the feminist coming out of Washington, the punk scene.
Yes, right.
During that time period.
Yes.
So really, even though third wave, they kind of, things that I've read put it at 2012, I really firmly feel like 2005 is more of the demarcation point, because that's when social media started to take off. Now, things that are kind of shared between third and fourth wave, a lot is shared between third and fourth wave, which again, going back to...
And is it also because a new generation of women now are stepping up?
I think...
at that point?
Well, certainly it got easier...
Or joining,
Yeah, it got easier to connect people with one another. I mean, you're talking about being able to instantly reach out and touch people on a message board to talk to them about these issues. That feeling, that universal feeling of the internet of being like, I'm not alone in these feelings I've got. There are people who echo this. Lots of communities have used, for better and for worse, let's be clear, have used the internet as a very powerful tool to spread information, to stoke fires, to remind people that no, they're not alone in these feelings. I think, the most successful use of social media, when it's not about posting cat pictures or about wondering if you're hearing Yanny or Laurel. We'll get to that.
What do you hear, by the way?
What? We'll get to that.
What do you hear, by the way?
Feminism for this.
Okay.
But, you're able to have conversations with people, talking about taking back slam words that were being used forever, like, I'm not going to be able to edit myself on this, bitch, cunt, slut. Being able to, kind of take that power back was started coming in the third wave as well. And you were mentioning fake eyelashes and undergarments and blah, blah, blah. The thing that also comes in with the third wave a little bit, kind of reclaiming being able to be a feminist and be pretty. Because there was, especially, sorry, it's a stereotype, but stereotypes exist for a reason. We got into the 70s, it was about burning the bras, about, dressing down, who needs makeup. These are symbols of the patriarchy kind of making me a doll on a shelf. But there is something to be said for the power of being able to take that back. It's ironic that I'm the one talking about this, how much makeup I'm not wearing. I don't have a bra on, it's a sports bra. But taking it back and being like, you know what? We're not burning our bras anymore. We're wearing them. Proudly. You know what? They're pink. They're lacy.
Yes.
Because I want to do it.
We're spending a lot of money on it.
Not because my husband expects and demands it, but because it makes me feel like a powerful woman. That started to come in with the third wave, which I feel is, even though, again, I'm a tomboy, I appreciate that feeling of it. Now, again, I said kind of this 2012 date as you're moving into fourth wave feminism, which is really kind of to now. I would say 2005 to now. Because a lot of the things as I'm reading about what the fourth wave, which let's be clear, we're in right now. The thing about it was my college experience going to a women's college kind of straddles what they call to be a line between third and fourth wave. The things that kind of characterize your fourth wave feminists, particularly now we're on the sexual harassment. How men mansplain to you, or street harassment too, specifically. That's actually one of those things where in social media, you brought it up way back, still talking, I think we were even saying Mary Shelley, like #MeToo. The social media aspect, I can't emphasize enough in third and fourth wave feminism, kind of uniting and making us kind of look at this and, they say also, both of these movements are characterized by a kind of an incredulity that this still happens, that this still exists. Because again, I think some people had gotten to this place, in the third wave, we were having our first female Secretary of State, our first female appointee to the Supreme Court, the notorious RBG. I love you. So you and I were 5 and
I really want that t-shirt, by the way.
I know, me too. You and I were little kids when we're talking about the end of Bush the First, going into the Clinton administration, and having a Madeleine Albright and a Ruth Bader Ginsburg in these positions of authority, and it could lead you into a kind of false sense that, well, look, but progress, look, we have one. let me emphasize this. We have one female Secretary of State now, so clearly we've fixed it. No early 90s. No, we have not. It's... I have understandably a lot of feelings about this entire topic because of where I went to school. And beyond that, I think, I'm going to cop to being that girl. When I entered college, it was the fall of 2003. And I didn't pick a women's college necessarily. I didn't pick it because it was a women's college, initially anyway. But what I kind of very quickly learned over 4 years was... and first of all, our curriculum was sort of designed for this too. I think it's a very smart thing that Russell Sage, I'm putting in my plug for you guys because I do love you and I believe in the curriculum. In your first year, it's not bludgeoning you over the head. Now, some people who are super sensitive would be like, what do you mean you're forcing a class called Women in the World on me? What's this demanded 3 credits out of me when I'm already wanting to be a nurse, so I want to go be an elementary education teacher? Why are you forcing this course in my lap? Where we're literally just sitting around and talking about the achievements of women in all of these fields. Stop and think about that for a minute. It's not saying that, this is literally just saying, let's look at these things. Have you ever really stopped to think? And it was probably, short of the fact that, and I did love my instructor, our instructor was male, but he actually brought a lot to the table on that in a very open way, talking about these things, and I really appreciate it. Also helped use my theater professor.
That's really healthy, I think, also for women to see a male.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Give them, deliver the information.
Absolutely. So after our first year, then we came into our fast forward to your senior year, there's another requirement, and we called it Women Changing the World. So you go from just talking about women in their fields to doing a project on someone of the now doing good work and forward conversation. So this was kind of the structure inside of which I was sort of exploring, had I had these thoughts about it before. This is going into a little bit of personal disclosure on my part. My mother's not particularly feminist in her bent. She's just not. My grandmother was a lot closer to being someone that I could sort of lean, both of my grandmothers, to be honest. One of the stories that I used to tell without even really thinking about it was how my paternal grandmother, people used to say about her, oh, Betty would have been a fantastic minister if only she wasn't a woman.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my grandmother really did have a passion for speaking, and she was very, very, very well spoken when you got her on a topic. But it was one of those things that you could tell she hadn't developed that skill set because she was essentially told with a wall in her face that wasn't going to be something she could pursue, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
A real shame. She wound up doing secretarial work, and actually it was sort of funny. Another story I love to tell about my grandma cook was that she would tell me, okay, never wear high heels and don't drink coffee, and like she'd be like, kind of what. And yet I'm sitting backstage, one of my first shows I did in college, and there I am in my 4-inch spikes, and I've got like a double size. I'm like, sorry, Grandma, it's college at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I wear heels on stage. Let's be clear. Otherwise, no. So there's just been, I feel like, in talking about the wave we're in now with fourth wave feminism, bringing it right up to this very moment, you've got people like Harvey Weinstein and this Bill Cosby verdict, which just came down, and talking about the thing that drives me nuts when I hear it are people going, well, but what about all the good they did before that? And do you negate all of that? Do you negate that career because of what they did? To be honest, I look at old episodes of The Cosby Show now. I flipping through cable the other day. It does make me feel a little bit oogie. A little bit. Because you're realizing that he's enjoying this success in front of the camera, and we're all embracing him. I think it's harder for us the more wholesome image that somebody portrays when you see what's going on behind the scenes. When they don't live up to the ideals that you seem to believe they espouse, or what the script puts out there for them, I would
I have found that hypocrisy makes me more angry than almost anything else in the world.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that specifically for Cosby, I mean, his early albums are so family friendly and marriage positive.
He's America's dad. You know, honestly, that was what was being attached to him. Cliff Huxtable was kind of like that ideal. I mean, it's a real tough thing to run up against. But I say also at the same time, more to it. You know, what I was getting frustrated with people who were like, so when's it gonna stop? I was like, as soon as men stop acting that way. How about that? How you know? Well, it can't be everybody. I think what was really shocking people every time someone else came forward was that shocking / for those of us who've been there, it's not shocking at all. How many? It's like, oh no. Let's be clear. You know, it's, you know, Harvey Weinstein is a big example of someone who was able to climb, poor choice of words here, but climb over people. I know. And have this not just successful career, but wildly successful, multi-billion-dollar corporation, all the while engaging in some of the most debasing behavior towards half of our population, honestly. So as far as being in the
and people at the same time, people being supportive, for lack of a better word,
but he's
in that
such
character.
a nice guy. But you know what? Time's up on being able to behave that way. Not to tie it off with a slogan and a hashtag, but
making you strange this week?
Yeah, in what might be starting to become my favorite segment, where we just talk about what's making us strange this week. I think I only need to say two. Are they both names? Well, I guess Yanny and Laurel. I watched this. We're recording this on Wednesday night with this to drop Thursday night. So hello, editing room. But I was sitting in bed last night. This was a Tuesday
You're
night,
welcome.
next to my husband, and I'm like, "What's this thing?" Like, I have one friend who shared this article, and I'm like, "Yanny," and then Packy leans over and goes, and I was like, "Packy, what are you hearing?" And he's like, "Laurel." And I was like, "What? No! It's the dress all over again. What's happening?"
It is.
What do you hear, Juliana?
Okay. When I listened on my laptop, I heard Yanny. Yanny. When I put it on a speaker, I could hear Laurel.
Yeah.
I could actually hear the part of the L more than the ending.
Yeah.
Rule.
I very quickly heard both, but definitely it started with a Yanny.
Yeah.
I was listening to it on my phone. So quality of the speaker, you know, whatnot. I love the academic breakdowns of this thing that I've been reading about, you know, sound production. It's all deeply interesting. Speaking of being geeky, it's all deeply interesting stuff. But it's the dress, it's the sneaker, it's exactly what the internet just loves to devour. I went to bed going, that was weird, and I woke up the next morning and my Facebook newsfeed is on fire. I don't know what happened, but suddenly everyone has an opinion. And apparently the guy who posted this initially actually within the past couple hours posted something else, or somebody called and interviewed him about it, and he said no, it is a kind of like an online dictionary saying the name Laurel, and it was recorded from his speaker, so there's distortion on it. But God, it's so interesting. Maybe what's more interesting than just it being stupid Yanny Laurel is just the fascination of how different we hear things. It's the same thing of how different we see things. Like, And also seeing how quickly something jumps onto social media and spreads. There's a reason we call it viral. There's a reason it's called something goes viral. Because not even 6 hours of sleep later, the internet's on fire, the world is on fire. So that's
We're all so curious. I love it when we all get curious at the same time.
Yeah. No, it's that little thing. Suddenly it's a cultural itch, and we're all over it. I mean, you know, some people would say that's why society's got a downfall. I would say that's actually just an interesting study into how people tick.
Yeah.
So what's making you strange this week, now that I've gone on internet viraldom?
Oh, I have to do something horrible. I have to go get something. Hang on 1 second. It's going to be just a second.
Uh-oh.
I'm still here.
Where'd you go?
Okay.
Funny how I can't get through.
Okay. All right.
You're going to hate me when you see that.
Okay. Okay. So, a little while ago, I watched a mini-series that originally aired on BBC Two. And I can't remember what, I watched it on Amazon, I think, when it came through, but it's called The Crimson Petal and the White.
Okay.
It is thematically very close to what we're talking about today. So if you like Victorian drama, you will probably like this, although it's written in a contemporaneously. That's right. In 2011, Michael Faber writes the novel Crimson Petal and the White, and I must have seen the miniseries as soon as it became available and very popular on Amazon, because I have been on the library waitlist. I started on the waitlist at number 52.
Oh, God. You sound like me with Michelle.
And now I'm number 2.
Book.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was just waiting forever, so I finally.
So, because I saw the miniseries, loved it, wanted to actually read the novel. I read a couple other of Michael Faber's books in the meantime, but something new came in on my library waitlist as well that I'm so excited, and it also fits with the theme. This is probably coming in backwards, but this is You Play the Girl.
Okay.
On Playboy Bunnies, Stepford Wives, Train Wrecks, and Other Mixed Messages.
Wow.
This is by Karina Chicano, and it's a collection of essays, and I'm so excited to read it, and I just got it today, and it happens to go on perfectly with my train of thought in Gothic Feminism this past week anyway, so that is making me super happy and super strange.
Way to be on
Strange Dears, thank you so much for listening or watching.
Yeah, as always, please subscribe, follow, give us feedback on social media, which I feel like I've said social media 19 times tonight.
One thing we're curious about, I want you to write us, tell us when and where you're listening to the podcast.
And then give us something else, like what's been your favorite episode so far?
Yeah, and do you have any suggestions for what we should cover in future episodes?
Please let us know.
Just send a tweet or Instagram message to @StrangeDear. Put #StrangeDear at the end so we can find it.
Have a great week, everybody, and keep being
strange, dear.